And here we are again on a Saturday. Figured I'd let the music play just a little longer than normal, draw out the suspense. But I guess it all leads up to just this, so wah. Anyway, back here again for LG Hockey Hotline. We are now, 4 weeks through the season? Am I correct? Was that week 4?
Yep, that was week 4.
So we're hitting halfway after this coming week. It's going by faster than usual, as usual. And, you know, the West is quite the battle from top to bottom. And the East is, you know, the top teams are the top 3 or 4 teams in the East, or 5 teams in the East are doing pretty well, and some other ones are struggling extremely badly. So, I don't know, just another typical LG season. Got some good teams, got some not so good teams, and lots of teams making moves to try and shore up their roster, as we're only a couple of weeks away from the deadline to get that finished for the whole season already. What do you think's going on here, Moran?
I just think it's, you know, another season in LG. It's cooking right along this time. Seems to definitely be the fastest one yet, but, you know, every season is going to seem like that. I have a feeling at this point, you know, as it becomes as per usual these days. But yeah, you're right. You know, you have some teams that are quite far below 500 in the Eastern Conference, and you know, you have some teams that are, you know, you only have 2 teams in, or actually make that 1 team in the Western Conference that's below 500. So you know, it's an interesting dynamic. You know, and you can't really, without completely breaking it all down and looking at the stats of everything, it's tough to say if one's, you know, but at first glance, it definitely looks as though it's a gauntlet in the West, and you know, a interesting ride in the East. So, but you know, teams are starting to separate. Teams are starting to make pushes, and you know, we're going to be at the halfway point come Tuesday. So, you know, here we go.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I'm not afraid to step on toes. I think the West is definitely top to bottom much more difficult than the Eastern Conference is. But the top teams in the Eastern Conference, you know, your Devils, Blue Jackets, Sabres, teams like that are just as good as any team in the West. So, you know, I think it's just the balance thing, top to bottom, that's different. I mean, you've got the Maple Leafs, who have lost 7 in a row. The Lightning have lost 9 in a row. Bruins have lost 4 in a row. Those are 3 huge losing streaks in the same division in the Eastern Atlantic, which is the division that we're going to be covering today. And, you know, they've got 8 teams in that division, and 6 of them ended their week on a loss or a losing streak of some sort. So it's going to be interesting to talk about that and see what's going on in the Eastern Atlantic Division. You know, I don't know what's going to happen this weekend as far as moves, but I have to believe that some of those teams are going to be looking to move guys in and out and shake things up after the week that was just had for a few of those guys, especially Tampa and Toronto, losing 7 and 9 games. To end the week is extremely tough. It's not fun to go that way. So, you know, I wouldn't be surprised to see them making moves to try and change things up, you know, whether they need new talent or not, just to mix up the roster, because it can get pretty dicey if you're losing that many games at once. Guys start to get impatient, and, you know, things start to be said to each other when they shouldn't be. Could be a toxic situation for some people. So I hope everything's going okay with those teams. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, trade requests get put in, and you know, it just kind of snowballs on you in a hurry. You know, if you got guys who feel like they should be on a playoff team or whatever it is, You get your trade requests put in, and next thing you know, you're up the creek. Having to make a lot of moves that you didn't really want to make. But it's a tough situation. I'm sure quite a few, if not everybody's been in that situation before. So it's a difficult spot for sure.
Yeah. Well, I guess let's move into our division spotlight this week, the Eastern Atlantic Division. And let's move right into the Montreal Canadiens, who are sitting right now as the last place team in the entire league, actually, at 23 points on the season. They are 11, 24, and 1. Have really struggled each week in this season so far. And they've made some moves, a decent amount of moves this season, trying to bring in new guys, move out old ones. They've waived some players. Interesting how much turnover has been on this roster since the beginning of the season. Bidu is, of course, the owner there. Self-Title is his GM. And it really, to this point, just seems like everything they've tried has struggled, but they've had some solid players on that roster and have a couple right now as well. They picked up Jew of Canada. They just picked up C.W. McWillie from Edmonton, a guy that I mentioned had been in Edmonton one way or another each of the last 3 seasons under 3 separate owners. They've got M.A. Scottless there, who has been made AGM of that team. And, Mitch is a buddy of mine and, a good guy. We'll see if he can help them bring in some guys that can work together with chemistry. But so far, looking at this roster, they've all struggled all season long. And they've got 2 ATR4 who's 0-12 on the season. That's crazy. It's hard to believe that that's happened. I didn't think the roster was that weak to start the season, but they've certainly struggled a bit.
Yeah, I mean, let's not beat around the bush. They definitely have. They've been moving players in and out quite frequently. So it's definitely one of those things where Bidu's come back to the league as an owner. Takes over Montreal, and let's face it, it's a team that was, in some rough spots last season as well. So, he steps into an interesting situation, and, he's doing his best to find combinations that work, trying to get, the right pieces in, went out and, won some pretty hefty salaries in restricted free agency, picking up some players that were pretty high dollar tickets. So they had a lot of cap and some of these players tied up. I'm sure expected some pretty good things, as some of these guys are outstanding players. It just hasn't hit their way this season, and sometimes that happens. Sometimes you just don't quite have the right mix of players, and things just don't go your way through the season. And looking at this team, I mean, this is a team, they're sitting with $6 million in cash left, so they're not right up against the salary cap or anything. They're a little bit below, so it definitely looks like they've gone and loaded up for next season already with some of the moves that they've made to bring players in and send players out. They currently sit with 6 draft picks for next season. So, I don't think they're blind to the fact that, they're currently sitting in last right now. So they're definitely doing the right thing as far as, still trying to, get going here. As we are only at the halfway point, anything can happen in this league. We all know that. We've seen teams go from worst to first. It's just extremely rare that it does happen, or from, should I say, not from worst to first, but from worst to a playoff spot. We've seen that happen. Right. They've made a lot of deals with this team to bring players in and send players out. So we'll kind of see if they've got the right mixture now at this point to go out and win some games.
Right. Honestly, though, if you still feel like you have a chance at the playoffs right now, if you're Montreal, this is the weekend you have to make as many big deals as you can to get players in to help this team win. And then whatever happens this week, let's say you go 9-0 this week, then, you can tell yourself you're recovering. It's a division week this week. You can get yourself back up in this division. But this is the week, because after this week, week 6 is the following week. Trade deadline's right there. You have to move your stuff out if you're not going to make the playoffs, and get what you can to help your organization for next season. Maybe pick up guys that are on not necessarily just draft picks, but picking up guys on multi-year deals, and convincing them that you'll have the right situation next season and everything. You don't want to make a bunch of big moves right now to shore up this roster, just to miss the playoffs and have no assets to help you build next season and get stuck with, an extra large contract or a player that doesn't want to be there. So, it's tough when you're sitting right here about the halfway point with the trade deadline coming up. It's not too late, but I mean, it almost kind of is. And definitely after this week, you will have to make a decision whether it's buy or sell time. So we'll see what happens with the Canadians this week, but they're in a tough spot.
Go ahead. When it comes to the sell time, you don't want to just give your assets away either.
No. You got to get as much as you can in return. So you're selling things that you can sell to a team that, hey, this will help you this season. I need something that's going to help me a little bit this season, as far as I can't bring somebody in who's going to destroy my locker room. We can't have this kind of season and make it be miserable. But I need something that's going to help me next season as well, or there's no point in me doing the deal.
Absolutely.
So, we'll see what happens. Tampa Bay Lightning are sitting in 7th, and they were sitting, I think, in 4th or 5th last week. They lost all 9 games last week, which is not typical of a Chaskin-run Tampa Bay Lightning team. Kind of surprised to see that here. And one of the things that's shocking when you look at the Canadians, they're 8-3-1 in 1-goal games. That's the best record in 1-goal games for a last-place division team, or bottom 3 division team, other than maybe the Islanders. The Tampa Bay Lightning are 1-6-6 in 1-goal games. That's tough, because there's 12 games right there where you picked up 6 points out of a possible 24 points in 1-goal games. And to go on a 9-game losing streak this past week dropped them almost to last in the division, but they're in a 3-way tie with the Maple Leafs themselves and the Bruins right now at 26 points. All of them ending on a losing streak for the week. Not what we're used to seeing out of the Tampa Bay Lightning, who won the Cup in season 1 and have been in the conversation for it every season since.
Yeah, I mean, and you just at first glance looking across the stat lines here, 1-7-2 in their last 10. But something that's kind of odd that sticks out to me, though, is that their home and away record is almost identical. They're 5-10-2 on the road, they're 5-10-4 on the road, and they're 5-10-2 at home. So it just seems like no matter what's going on here, they're definitely, struggling. And that shows you right there how quick a team can fall. It's not that easy to get back up. And get back up the standings. But if you go out and lose 9 in a row, you can plummet off the edge and go all the way down to the bottom. But coming back up sure is a hell of a lot more tough than it was going to the bottom.
Yeah, it is. It's a struggle because those teams, especially the teams that are up near the top of the division, your Sabres, Senators, Red Wings, those guys are continuing to win, 19-3-3, 2015, or 13-4, 2015-1, 18-4. I mean, those are teams that have almost twice as many regulation wins as you do. And you don't get any breathing room. So you're winning just to keep pace is something we talked about last week. Last season we went on a 12-game win streak and literally through the 12-game win streak in our division remained in 4th place the entire time.
Yeah, I think we gained maybe 4, maybe 6 points on the guys we were chasing.
Yeah, we started like 7 points or 6 points back of first place, won 12 straight games while they went like 10-2 or 10-1-1 or like it's so, if you lose 5 games, 6 games, 7 games in a row, you can drop 10, 12, 13, 14 points in a week. But if you win the exact same number, if you win 9 games in a row, you will not catch them nearly as quick as if you lose the games and fall away. So a tough position here for Tampa, and not the kind of week that I'm sure Hayes and Chaskin were hoping to have. And, they made a big trade last week, bringing it, with Colorado, bringing in Hazy Hype, bringing in John Sheldon, and also Jay Mars, and they claimed Rukshan NHL off of waivers from Colorado. And after making that trade, how did the trade work out? Well, they went 0-9. They didn't get bad players. I can promise you they didn't get bad players, but going 0-9 on the week, it has to make them a bit sour.
Yeah, and just pulling up their schedule and looking at it, I mean, week 2 they did almost the same thing. They only won 1 game in week 2, so this doesn't seem like it's new territory for them this season after coming out with such a promising week 1 and going 6-3. To have a week 2, 3, and 4 like this just has to be a little bit deflating for them. But like you said, they did just make a couple of moves, brought in some players, see if they can't, get going here. They have 3 more opportunities to play against their division. And those 3 weeks are going to be huge weeks for teams like Tampa if they expect to even sniff a chance at getting back in this thing and getting going here. But, that's why we play the games, and that's the beauty of playing your division every other week, is that if you do fall behind, you can have a possible opportunity of catching up. You just got to get the ship righted and get it righted in an extremely quick fashion.
Yeah, and we'll see how like the Ruck pickup on waivers is going to help them. That's a free player.
Talent. They've got talent all over this roster. Extremely talented players.
They have a roster where you're speechless when they go 0-9. They could very, very easily go on a 15-game win streak right now. It wouldn't surprise me at all. So we'll see what happens. I think they're, of the teams at the bottom of their division or conference, they're in a much better spot than a lot of them as far as talent on the roster goes.
I would agree with that 100%. And just looking across this team with, Hazy Hype, who's now an AGM for them. Flight Airlines, a very solid goaltender. He's proven it. He's been on some extremely bad teams in the past, Arizona season 2. And when you really looked at his numbers from there, it was like, damn, he's actually a pretty good goaltender. So, he's a solid goalie. Fool is an outstanding player. Amador is a very solid player. John Sheldon is a great defenseman. Jay Mars, I mean, come on. Like, Malkin's a great player. Matt the Rock, Rukshan, Ryudo. I mean, the list goes on and on and on with this team. So, looking at him, you're right. It's a real head scratcher when you look across this roster, see the talent they have, and see that they just lost 9 games in a row. It's mind-boggling, really. But like you said, they've definitely they've pushed most of their assets into the table here. They've pushed their money into the pot, and they're going to make a run here. And you can tell just by looking. All they have remaining asset-wise is a 3rd-round draft pick from Calgary, and as we all know, Calgary is currently in first place in that Western Pacific Division. So, that pick really does you no good. So they've pushed all in. They're all in here. They're going to try and make a push here in the second half of the season. And looking across this roster, I think it's something that they can get done, especially given the teams that they're going to be going up against on a weekly basis here.
Yeah. The only struggle really is that they find themselves, let's see where 35. So they're 9 points back of the last wild card spot. That's doable. But they find themselves 14 points back of the Red Wings in the third spot of their division. The 0-9 week really hurt them. Well, I guess the 0-7-2 week really hurt them in that fashion, because catching those teams, Detroit, Ottawa, and Buffalo, is going to be really tough. They're right there. If they can make up 14, they can make up 16, but they got to start this week against their division, making it so that they, a 7-2 week this week with the two or with one of those losses coming from, a conference opponent instead of a division opponent could go a long way for this team. But they put themselves in a position where they're going to need help. So, all they can do is find the right combos and start winning games and see where it falls. It's definitely early enough with the roster they have, they can do it. But, they've had their 0-7-2 week. They cannot do that again.
The time is now. That's for sure.
Yeah, they can't have another one of those. So another team that, is sitting there at the 26-point mark in this division, the second team of the three that are tied at 26, the Toronto Maple Leafs finished the week on a 7-game losing streak. Something I also want to point out real quick, the Canadiens are 73 goals for and 161 goals against. They're almost a minus 100. Whoa. They're minus 90 on that. Is that 88? Minus 88 and or 92, one of the two.
I probably would have liked if you would have kept that one to yourself.
Right. And then the Lightning are 88 goals for and 111 goals against. The Maple Leafs are 77 goals for and 137 goals against. That's a difference of minus 60 for the Maple Leafs. Struggling to score and struggling to stop them is not a good combination. And the interesting thing about that is that they are 6-4 in 1-goal games, about 500, but they did pick up the 4 OT losses, which without those 4 OT losses are sitting at the lowest point total in the league. So those 1-goal games will make a difference in the standings, as we've said before. And the Maple Leafs right now, not sitting where they want to be after a 7-game losing streak to close out the week. They are 2-6-2 in their last 10 games. So only 2 wins in their last 10, just like Tampa, only 1 in their last 10. Toronto's a roster that has changed a bit. They've picked up some solid players, made some moves. They made a big move today and picked up Late Tekes from the Hurricanes along with Reddy. And, those are 2 guys that I was surprised that Carolina let go, to be honest with you. They've been with them the last 2 seasons. They picked up a guy in Sabres 2019 who is a solid center as far as talent and everything goes. We'll see how he fits in the locker room. They're the goalie that they have, Mr. Penguin 30s, 5-13-3 on the season. I've seen this guy play and actually played against us, I believe, against you, Moran, and took you to overtime 2-1.
We just absolutely peppered them with shots, and they weren't just throwing it at the net. These were, some of them were, obviously, because you got to do that sometimes, but some of these were nicely set up plays. We had over 24 shots, I think. And he was making save after save after save after save, just really reading the play well. So, when and looking at him and seeing his record, it's like, damn, how is that even he was outstanding against us. I was blown away with the way he played.
Yeah. And I think he's probably got the low record as a product of things happening in front of him after, because I've watched him play several games. I've played a couple against him in club, and um, I've been impressed with him, honestly. He's a draft pick this season, I think in the third round, might have been fourth round, but he's a solid goaltender, and I think they're good on the back end as
Uh,
far as that goes.
he was a second rounder, 70th
Second,
overall.
okay, so mid second round, and I look at Bud's his owner there. His GM is a Trail who had a good season last season on D, struggling this season a little bit at 3-7-1 on the season. They've got their AGM Ali 21, who I'm assuming is a Trails D partner, at least has been a little bit. Um, they picked up a guy in Goosechuck off of waivers who is 4-7 on the season. He's got 7 points, but he's a solid defenseman. But I don't see anybody jumping off the page at me on defense as a true number one defenseman on this roster. So I don't know if they're rotating lines around or what they're doing as far as the decor goes, but it seems like this team maybe lacks a solid direction. They got a bunch of good pieces, but I don't know how it all fits. And maybe making that move to bring in Reddy and Leite might help put something back together for them, because those are two outstanding forwards, a center and a right wing, that I would assume will play together, and that should help ignite this team offensively.
Well, I mean, is that who I think it is at left wing there, or no?
Which one?
Big B Boy QC.
Yeah, big boy QC.
But no, yeah, this team's definitely one of those teams where you look across it and it's, you could tell that they've, made some moves to try and bolster the team, try and get, something going. And there's some players I really like on this team. You had mentioned Sabres 2019. I think he's an outstanding center. But sometimes has a little bit of trouble matching in the locker room, like you said. And then you got a guy like Mr. Penguins, who's just a very good goaltender and just needs to.
Sparkplug Nick as well was an extremely good goaltender for them last season that got very little recognition, and he stood on his freaking head.
For sure. You got N. Riney on this team, who's proven to be a good player in this league, as well as Real Demon. So, rub my duck. They have some pieces here, and it looks like they have a couple first round picks and a second in the cupboard.
Did you just tell me to rub your duck?
So, this one's a tough one for me as far as, it's time for this team to start doing something. Right. It's time for the Toronto Maple Leafs to get going in this league. And, there's no better time than now for this team.
Yeah. I think that I've heard that this team has had trouble with people showing up even to play league games, so they've used a bunch of ECUs and
post on that.
Right. And all I have to say is, like, as far as that goes, I understand it's summer season and people have vacation and things like that, but all I want to say is don't go out of your way to cause problems on your team purposely. There's just no point in doing that. Like, if you have a problem with somebody on the team or the owner or the GM or something, if it's a problem with the GM, go to the owner. If it's a problem with the owner, go to the GM and talk to him. But be adult-like about it. Don't just be an asshole, because that makes people want to help you less and gives you a reputation. Don't think owners and management don't talk. People talk. Don't ruin yourself just because you're unhappy in a place. Still play your game and try and do your best.
Yeah, don't ruin your brand. As LG McDonald and Triz have always talked about, throughout this league, your name is your brand in this league. And it's just, you don't want to be known as that guy who gives up or rage quits or, starts diving all over the ice when his team isn't doing well, because that's just not going to get you a job next season on a team that you would want to play for.
Right. Which is why I'm extremely pissed off at Flapjack for calling me a snake, because now I'm stuck as a snake. Oh, and that's a different conversation. Let's go there later. I still love you, Flap. You're my boy. So, I think Toronto sitting there tied at 26 with the Lightning and the Bruins. They make that trade to bring in Reddy. This is the week where it's like we have to make a move. We're only 9 points out in the conference race for the wild card behind the Panthers and the Flyers, who are both at 35 points. The Flyers just lost a lot of big players off their roster. We'll get into that trade in a little bit and talk that stuff, but it looks like the Flyers will be moving backwards, so that's going to be a spot coming available unless they put it back together. But I mean, you got to feel like some of these teams are losing some talent, and Toronto did just bring some talent in. This big division week this week, we'll preach it every time. If they can have a big week this week and those guys that they made moves for can come in and win their games and maybe bring positivity to the locker room, one of these teams, whether it's Buffalo, Ottawa, Detroit, Florida, Boston, Toronto, Tampa, Montreal, or any of the 8 in the other division in the Eastern Conference, one of those teams is going to be the team that catches fire at the right time and goes to represent in the conference final. Are you going to be that team, or are you going to be the guy that sits there and kicks dirt around saying, nobody likes me, this is bullshit? Are you going to grab it by the balls and go do it? We'll see what happens. But I think Buds has made a couple of moves here showing that, at least at this juncture in the season, he believes he can still get it done, and he's trying his damnedest to do it.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's definitely something that he's trying to tweak. You can see it in the moves they've made. But the book's definitely out on this still, to see if they've made the right moves, or if they continue to make moves, or if they steadfast where they're at. It definitely all remains to be seen with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yep. So let's move on to the team that is the third wheel in this three-way of teams at 26. Schroyer's Boston Bruins. Schroyer, the Arizona Coyote legend. That might have been the best. He didn't have to actually tell me. Hold on, I got it here. Hold on, it was perfect. Yes, Schroy Daddy, the Coyotes legend, now owner of the Boston Bruins. There was a falling out with Dank Chank, who is not in the league anymore, so Schroy had to make a new GM. He made a trade to bring in Evo. Evo is now his GM on that team. Struggling a bit this season at 1-7-1, and then he went on vacation and missed a week. But he brought in one of the top centers from Xbox and Duggan, who is now also part of that Common Kings ESHL team. They made a move to pick up Globes. They've got King Cons on left wing instead of goalie this season. They just brought in OGKJ. They have Shocks, Sobo, and Net. This is a roster that, they must be struggling availability wise. It wouldn't surprise me if that was the case, because I'm honestly surprised to see a Schroyer run team in which last time he was GM won the cup, struggling to this point in the season. They made a big move in signing Big Yan, and after he signed up late and missed the draft, they brought him in the free agency part of bidding, and then they traded him away, got Evo, brought him in as the GM, and it's kind of interesting to see Boston struggle because they're another team like Tampa who has talent up and down that roster.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, I think availability has definitely been an issue with this team. You look across it and you see guys 7 games played, 3 games played, 5 games played, 10 games played. You see that all across their roster. And, everybody, skater wise, outside of the goaltenders, should be at 12 games played right now. So, of course, those could have been guys who were brought in and, haven't really clicked on them to see if they've played their 12 games for the season. So I could be wrong in that. But, it's unfortunate, because like you said, you look across this roster and this is another one where you see a lot of extremely talented players. Duggan is a well-known player on the Xbox side, who just straight gets it done, normally, as per, his $8.5 million contract would lead you to believe. So they've got some extremely talented players on this team, and obviously Schroyer, who just continues to do his thing on the back end with the defensive core. It'll be interesting to see if this team can get going, because if this team gets going, you're not going to be wanting to step out on the ice with them. That's for sure. There's a lot of talent across this team. There's a lot of guys, a lot of Xbox guys, a lot of top PlayStation guys. So I think the Dank Chank thing was kind of a pretty big hit to this team. Personally, if you asked me, they may not say so if you asked them. But we all know across this league what kind of a two-way center Dank Chank is, and to lose somebody like that, I don't care who you replace him with, that's a big blow to the team. That's something that really hits you hard as a team as a whole, especially when it's a top center such as Dank Chank.
Well, on a regular basis through every season, when you talk about Selke candidates, it's CC Piper, Dank Chank, and who will be the third guy that maybe challenges one of those two for it. It's right, but that's what you hear, right? It's
right.
Those two guys, those three guys. Pinder, obviously, one of them as well. I think Pinder, he plays center and wing, so I think that's why people don't talk about him as vocally, because everybody imagines it as the center award, but it's any forward position.
Right.
The top 3 defensive positioning forwards in the league, Dank Chank is in that list every time. So it does hurt to lose a guy like that. Especially a guy that, they were friends for a long time. I have no idea what's going on there, so I'm not going to
speculate, right?
Weasel down that road in any manner, but physically on the ice, it does hurt not having that center. It's a tough center to replace in any way, if you lose someone like that. So we'll see if Boston's able to get their shit together and move up the standings. They've struggled this season. They're 3-7 in their last 10. They're 8-1 away and 4-14-1 when hosting, which is incredible. Ended the week on a 4-game losing streak. They're 12-22-2 on the season. But only, less than 10 points out of that wild card spot. So as much as they've struggled so far to this point, if they have a big week this week, they're right there with the Maple Leafs Lightning. If they have big weeks, they can put themselves right back in that conversation into playoff spot. But if they continue to have availability issues and having to play ECU guys that I don't care how good your ECUs are. You can have NHL talent, like Calgary has Loops as their GM down in the AHL, NHL caliber player. But if you have Loops come up and play with these two forwards one night, and then the next night he comes up and plays with these two forwards, and then the next night you have him play defense with a whole different line, I don't care how good that player is. There's no continuity there. And coming up against, let's say you play against a Chicago first line, or a Dallas first line, or a St. Louis second or first line, or anything like that, lines that play together on a regular basis, ECUs are not going to win you games. very often. It'll be like 1 out of every 3 or 4 games you'll win with an ECU. So if Boston can get their availability stuff figured out, please help Schroyer out and show up to your games. Um, you can expect them to move up those standings probably pretty quickly with the talent they have, but they definitely need to show up to do that.
Well, yeah, and this is a team here. I mean, this is one of those things where when you have an owner like Schroyer, everybody in the league knows that the owner of Boston is Schroyer. So what's everybody in the league going to do? They're going to throw their first lines at Boston. I guarantee you Boston has seen a shit ton of first lines this season. And for me, looking across their schedule, they haven't had a week where they've had more than 4 wins yet this season. So, just at first glance, they've struggled right out of the gates here. It's time for this team to get going here. It's time for these guys to really start, pulling in the same direction. Like we've said, there's a lot of talent on this team, and maybe this is all part of their plan. Everyone throws their first lines at them for the first part of the season, and now everybody's going to be like, oh, Boston, they're a pushover. We'll just throw our third line out there, and they're going to be able to scoop up some easy points here. But that being said, it is a Schroyer-led team, so they're going to be seeing their fair share of top lines. So they're going to need their top guys to show up and get the job done here.
For sure. So we'll see what happens with that 3-way that's going on at 5, 6, and 7 in the Eastern Atlantic. And I can promise you one of those 3 teams, Boston, Toronto, Tampa, at least one of those teams will be fighting their way up and pushing for a playoff spot before it's all said and done. I don't want to sit here and pick one of those teams over another. Schroyer has obviously proven that he can go win a cup with Buffalo. He's done it. As GM, he's helped them do that. Tampa has won a cup with Chaskin, I believe, was the GM this season that they did it. Maybe the AGM. Can't remember. But he's been there for all of them. But I would say Boston and Tampa definitely expect to get back together, but they can't continue to go on 3-7, 1-7-2, 10-game spans. That will not help them get it done. So without further ado, let's move into our top half of this division, starting with the 4th place team, the Florida Panthers. The Florida Panthers are closer to 500 here at 16, 17, and 3. They have 35 points, which is good for where are they here? Wait a second. Am I missing something?
What do you mean?
Okay. No, never mind. I was looking at the standings and I had Florida highlighted, so I was missing them on the right side. Florida is sitting in the 8th and final wild card spot at 35 points. So there's 4 teams in this division in a playoff spot currently. They have 96 goals for 103 goals against. They're just a -7 on that, but pretty close to even. They're 2-6-2, however, in their last 10 games, and have fallen as a result of that. Switched places with Detroit, who's 6-3-1 in their last 10. They're 9-6-3 in 1-goal games, and it's another team in this division that is 4-10-1 at home and 12-7-2 on the road, which is mind-boggling to me. It's extremely interesting to see that big of a difference between and the advantage being on the away side, the games that you don't host in Club Challenge. But Florida's sitting there in that 4th position, and new owner this season and Lazy Pedestrian. He's done a pretty good job with that team. He's got Mamba as his GM. Their AGM is Teagill, who is an outstanding center / right wing / goaltender who shut us down one night. We couldn't score on him to save our lives in club.
Oh,
yeah. So much so that he made a post about it, and then I had to go comment on it because it was true. He's 8-2-2 on the season with 26 points, 13 goals, 13 assists, plus 15. Lazy's 9-2-1, leading the way on this team as the owner and on defense. He's almost a point a game with 11 points in 12 games. They made a trade to pick up Fishy from us last week, who is a very solid forward that we picked up in the draft. They made a trade to pick up Ovechkin 8 Jr., who is a very solid left winger who he's got a solid record this season at 6-3-2 with 23 points, but normally scores more goals than he's got. He's only got 9 on the season, and he has not. He's at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He's missed a game too. So, you know, I think that they just made a trade to pick up Geno Snipe, didn't they? If I'm not mistaken.
He doesn't have any games played or anything, so I would assume.
Yeah, they just made a trade to pick up Geno Snipe, who has proven the last couple seasons that he belongs in the NHL and has done extremely well, putting up points. Chicago moved him out, and Florida picked him up. They've got solid left wingers there. Mike Jones is an outstanding goaltender. I think this roster has some really good pieces on it. But they've got some guys who've struggled just a little bit for them, and I don't know if they're just lacking maybe a balance in chemistry. They also picked up Darius Canuck FTC 12 from Chicago on right D as well, so mixing things up just a little bit. But this is a solid roster that struggled in their last 10, but I still expect to be fighting here and trying to keep this position and possibly moving up for a division spot.
Yeah, we'll see what happens here. Lazy Pedestrian takes over a team that just catapulted into the Stanley Cup Eastern Conference Finals, and then into the, so this is a team that's definitely, had a ton of turnover. I don't even know if there's one returning player on this team from last season, but this is a team that, made their way last season, and this season it just seems like they're right there. I think Lazy has done an outstanding job. He's kind of won me over as a person and a player and an owner. Yeah, he fixed my hair a while back, and I kind of took offense to it because it is what it is. But I really like. You're goddamn straight, I am. Sons of bitches. But no, I think Lazy's doing a good job here. He's moving some guys out when he needs to. He's got a good combination of players here. Allen's Canucks is an absolute dynamo player over in VG, puts up points in bunches. And that's a guy that he has, that hasn't, from the looks of it at first glance, hasn't quite found the line mates to get her going yet. Mike Jones is a very solid goaltender. Mike Jones.
Who?
Just kidding. Mike Jones. Mr. Purple Kush he brought in to play some right defense for him. Ovechkin's a solid player. Bringing Geno in, I think, will help this team. I think Geno is a top player in this league. I've always enjoyed running some games with Geno. He's a good dude. He's a great locker room kid. So I think he's going to give him a shot in the arm here to get going and catapult themselves up. And get up there in the conversation with the Red Wings and the Senators. They need to set their sights on the Red Wings and catch them, and then they need to overtake the Senators at that point and start looking towards Buffalo. I think this is a team that can do it. They just have to start doing it now, like a lot of these teams in the Eastern Conference. A lot of these guys, it just seems like they're kind of sitting in neutral over there, and they need to start making a move now. Florida's been, solid in week 1, 2, and 3, but then they stumbled last week a little bit. They need to get back on their horse here as they play against their own division, as everybody in the league does this week. And they can get themselves right back up into the top 3 spots very quickly this week. This week is going to show, teams within division which ones are the true contenders. I think after week 5 here, you're going to see the teams that are going to be pushing for those top 3 spots in their division and looking to punch their card to the playoffs. And I definitely think Florida is going to be one of those teams that's looking to make that move here in week 5.
Yeah. I think what's interesting, I'm looking at Allen's Canucks season so far. He lost 1-0 to the Penguins in week 1, but beat Detroit 4-1 and beat Montreal 8-1. And then in week 2, he lost 5-3 to Edmonton, 4-2 to the Islanders, and then 5-4 to your defending Cup champ New Jersey Devils. All three of those are close games that they lost. Then in week 3, lost 5-3 to Detroit, lost 4-3 to Ottawa, both teams that are ahead of them in this division, and then got a 1-0 forfeit win against Washington. Then week 4, he lost 4-1 to Nashville, got a 1-0 forfeit win against Philly, and then lost 4-1 against a Dallas powerhouse team that seems to finally be recovering and have now moved back up into a playoff spot in that extremely tough West Central. So he's picked up a couple of forfeit wins in his record, so he's only won 2 games as a skater, but every game he's lost has been by 1 or 2 goals, except for the 2 games this week. But he's played against some pretty solid teams that he's lost to in close games. So, I guess that's he's played 10 games because 2 of them were forfeits. So in 10
already,
yeah, oh yeah, there were a bunch of forfeits last week. So yeah, so in 10 games that he's played, he's got 24 points. That's 2.5 points a game basically, and that's with losing a handful of them against some really good opponents. So it looks like Florida's right there. They've just lost some close games, especially on that line, as I look at that. So making a trade to bring in a guy like Gino and Darius to come in and help this roster out, I expect that they'll probably rebound no problem and continue to work their way back up towards the top of that division. They've got a solid roster here.
For sure. I agree. And they've got plenty of assets moving forward into the future as well, as they currently sit with 7 draft picks in their back pocket to use as ammunition to further bolster their roster as well this season.
They do. So let's move on to our third place team in this division, the Detroit Red Wings, who have Forthy returning his owner, a.k.a. Incognito Pylon, who has changed his name on the site after struggling to start the season at 1-8-1 with 9 points and a -29. I'm assuming that's why he changed his name. But Forthy, I love that he can have fun with it because he is a solid player and he's a really good owner and a really good dude. He's always there. If I have questions about stuff or if I make a mistake on the show, he'll be the first one to quietly remind me that I was wrong and let me know what it was. But he brings in another guy that we had last season on right D and Beavesy to be his GM, and Beavesy is absolutely to me one of the top 5 or 6 defensemen in this entire league. He's 8-3-1 on the season with 15 points, 3 goals, 12 assists, and a +17, doing what he always does, goes out there and wins. They got Jay Silvers on D at 9-1-2. They picked up a guy in the draft in Killer Santo, who we talked about last week. He was on the weekly power rankings. He's 6-2-2 with 32 points on the season. Very good right winger and missed a few seasons, but came back. I think he plays summer season. They went out in RFA and picked up CD Ball, made a trade last week to bring in Theos. They have Sudsy, who's had outstanding seasons the last 2 seasons. He's 9-1-2 on the season with 49 points, right up there near the top of the league again. And, this is a team that seems to be trying to hit their stride here, have made some good moves and have been winning a lot of games. Sitting at 40 points right now, 18-14-4, third place in this division. What are you seeing with the Detroit Red Wings? Another solid team by Forthy.
Well, yeah, I mean, Forthy does a great job, after what had happened to him last year, sticking with it, sticking through it, using his draft picks that he had gained last season to rebuild this roster. I think he's got an outstanding roster right now. You take a player like Sudsy and, game 7 lineup, you put Theos on his wing, look out. You throw Beavesy at right D on that line. Those 3 guys alone You insert right winger and left D here. And that's one of the top game 7 lineups that you could ask for in the league. Sudsy sits currently at plus 24, which is only 7 shy of his team record in plus minus of 31 for a season. So, this is a center that can take over a game and own a game by himself. You throw somebody like Theos into the mix there, ZD Ball on this team, Beavesy, Killer Santo. This team's definitely got what it takes to really push for this Atlantic Division title. There is not a doubt in my mind that they can push for it. Gally Chucky's an outstanding player. They have Pat Dean between the pipes here. I think this team's definitely got what it takes. We may see them make a couple of minor moves here or there, but I don't see them making any big ones. Their cupboard's kind of empty as far as assets go, as far as draft picks go. So I would see probably them holding steadfast here. Jay Silvers is an outstanding defender that they have on this team. This team's definitely in a far better place than they were this time last season. This time last season, it was blowing up. Parts were flying every which way. Guys were getting banned, and it was all hell was breaking loose. And now this season, they're sitting comfortably in the 3rd spot in the Atlantic Division. They're only a couple of points out of that Atlantic Division lead, and I definitely see this as a team that can push both the Senators and Sabres for that division lead.
Yeah. I think if I'm looking just at their statistics strictly, I'm just seeing they're right behind Ottawa. They're 1 point behind Ottawa. They both have 129 goals for, but Ottawa only has 99 goals against, whereas the Red Wings have 117 goals against. So, I think what their focus has to be on here, they're right up there as one of, let's see, they are tied for 2nd in the entire league for goals for, but they're in the top half for goals against. So they just need to cut down on the goals against. Their offense is producing just fine. They have one of the highest producers in offense in Sudsy this season. We'll see if they can figure that out as far as cutting those goals down. It's basically keep your offense going and just trying to play defense a little tighter as a unit. Detroit's not that far off. They're only 2 points out from the division lead behind the Buffalo Sabres. But they're a good team, and they're right there, and they can definitely fix the problems that they have from within. It's not necessarily a personnel problem. It's just more of a tightening your game down problem. So, and it's not even that big. So I look for Detroit to be –
That's what she said.
In the Eastern Conference playoffs for sure, coming out of the Eastern Atlantic, and possibly fighting to win this division this season. We'll see what Ottawa and Buffalo are able to do. Also, Florida, Boston, Tampa, Toronto. See if any of those teams fall back a lot or jump up a lot. But Detroit's right there, and they've done what they've needed to be in the mix at the top of the division for a division title to this point. So. Let's move on to that 2nd place team I was just mentioning, the Ottawa Senators, as we try our best to move into our 2nd hour of the show smoothly. The Ottawa Senators are 20-15-1 on the season, 4 overtime wins. This is a team that made a trade with us actually preseason to pick up Kraz 18. They matched his bid in RFA bidding at $7 million. I thought was a bit low. I thought he'd be a little bit higher in RFA bidding, especially after seeing how restricted free agency bidding was. But Kraz doing what he always does, man. He's 10-2 on the season. He's got 48 points, 21 goals, 27 assists. He's got a plus 24. He is an outstanding forward that can carry a line regardless of the line he's on. They picked up another guy in bidding in King Clutch, who made the move to defense this season. He's 10-1-1 on the season with 18 points as a defenseman. which is about a point and a half a game, just under. He's got 6 goals, 12 assists, a plus 22. They made a trade to pick up It's Jodak, who was a draft pick by the Ducks this season. They've got their new owner this season is Bloop, who was the GM the last couple of seasons. And their GM is Alex Drum, who's having a solid season. He's 7-5, but got 35 points, 12 goals, 23 assists. Flo Show is a guy they picked up on defense. I believe he was an Xbox guy, if I'm not mistaken. This roster is pretty solid. Pasternak, also known as Rocco Rogers, 11-5-1 as a goaltender this season. Picked up Who Are You in the draft at number 3 overall. He is 10-2 on the season with 40 points. I'm assuming playing with Kraz as his left wing. They picked up Will Rolltide and Bidding. He's 8-3-1 with 28 points. A lot of really solid, a lot of outstanding players, couple of superstars on this team. Only 1 point back of the division lead, and Ottawa's looking to be one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference altogether.
Yeah, they definitely are. This team's got some outstanding firepower and guys like Alex Drum and Kraz. They've got some great back end players too. And King Clutch, 10-1-1 on the season. He's a plus 22, has 18 points. So this team, another guy that's extremely underrated that's on this team, I think, well, maybe not even underrated, just a guy that's, really coming on here is Who Are You, a guy that they picked up from the Mem Cup champion team there down in the CHL, who's just come on and exploded onto the scene with 40 points already, a plus 23 on the season, 10-2. So this team's definitely got some new faces on it for a lot of people, but it's definitely got some familiar faces on this team as well. So I think these guys are set up nicely. Bloop's done an outstanding job with this team and getting a nice balance. You look across this roster, you see a lot of guys that are, 500 or better. Some guys that are way better than 500. So, he's done a good job with this team. He's got a couple of good goaltenders in Zefster and Pasternak. Or Pasternak. This team's definitely sitting right there. We'll see if they, make any tweaks to this roster as we're coming into week 5 here. We're coming up on the halfway point, and this team's currently sitting in second place in their division. So I think they keep doing their thing, and it's, going to swing their way. Coming up and playing against your division this week, they could go out and put some space. They could catch Buffalo and put some space in between them and the other teams that are chasing them. Or, they could drop down a little bit here. You never know as you play, when you play your own division, anything can happen, but this team is extremely strong. They've got some of the best wingers in the league. They've got one of the best wingers in the league in Kraz. And I definitely see this team being there when the dust settles and getting themselves into the playoffs with pretty easily, I think.
For sure. So Sudsy at 49 points is second in the league in points this season behind Two-Way Klosky at 50 points. Two-Way Hockey at 50 points. That's a joke. Don't take that seriously, please. And, Kraz and Who Are You? Kraz is at third in the league in points with 48. For the Ottawa Senators, and then at 7th in the league in points is Who Are You at 40, and a 3-way tie with Flapjack, Serpy, and Who Are You at 40 points for 5th, 6th, and 7th. So Ottawa having a couple of guys there, and then for goals, Kraz and Who Are You both tied for 5th with 21 goals, tied for 4th with Big J with 21 goals on the season. So those guys putting up pretty large point totals to this point. And only 3 goals off of the league lead, each of those two, 24, which is Tendy, and Kraz only 2 points off the league lead in points. Sudsy only 1 point off the league lead. Some high offensive output from some of these players in the Eastern Atlantic on that top 10 list for the league this season. So definitely helping Ottawa get it done in their division right now. And, I don't see why this roster wouldn't continue to do that the rest of the way with the players they have. When you've got a guy like Kraz and King Clutch going 10-1-1 and 10-2 with a bunch of points up there, it's not necessarily about the points. If you've got 50 points on the season, but you're 2-10, who really cares? But if you're 10-2 with 50 points on the season, you're helping your team win. Then that's all you can really hope for as an owner, is to have somebody produce that kind of way. And Bloop's getting that out of a handful of his players. So Ottawa's right there, but they are trailing by 1 point the first place Buffalo Sabres, a team that has one less loss than them, but 3 more overtime losses than them. So Buffalo sitting at 19-13-4 on the season. So Ottawa is actually sitting at the highest win total in their division. They've just lost a couple more games and decided not to lose them in overtime. So they're a point behind or 2 points behind. But Buffalo's sitting there right now at 42 points. And the Buffalo Sabres have a roster that is still full of stars again this season. We looked at them last season. They made a trade. They had Boy to start the season. They made a trade to pick up Schroyer. They lose him this season to ownership and don't seem to suffer at all. They still have Skills Pay Bills, who was their number 1 overall draft pick last season. They made a trade to bring in Braden a couple weeks ago from St. Louis, who's 8-3-1 on the season. Skills is only 5-4-2 on the season, so struggling just a little bit record-wise. They picked up Official Mark on lefty, which would be their quote-unquote Schroyer replacement, and they got him at, I think, $7.5 million, which is almost it's a $3 million drop-off from his contract last season. So a bargain, if you will, for Official Mark. They've made a trade to bring in Terry Toronto from Calgary, which I was kind of surprised. I went and looked. He did used to have his name as Terry Toronto, and he changed it to XX Terry Tour XX. But Filthy changed his name back to Matty A.
Yep.
And they've got Straight Psycho as the GM this season. The guy Pinder, who we were talking about, is always up there as one of the best defensive forwards in the entire league, season after season. Made a trade to pick up Busy, who struggled a bit this season. He's 4-5, below 500. He's only got 17 points on the season. It's weird to see him with that kind of point total, because he's usually right there at the top of the league with
really out of character for Biz.
But Ryan X28 returns as owner here. Of course, he's 10-8 on the season in net. They have Balaki in net, who they picked up in that St. Louis trade as well, who's 9-6-2. But this team has slowly started to hit their stride over the last couple weeks. Have definitely been playing a lot better. Brought back a guy in It's Johansson, 92. He's 5-1-1 on the season, but that's one game over half the games he could have played to this point. So looks like they're having a bit of availability issue as well on this team, but not affecting them to the point that they've dropped. They're sitting at number 1 in the division. Made a couple, made a couple of moves, picked up Easy Dangles on right wing. But this team is a team that's got talent, especially starting with the defensive core in Braden, Skills, Pay Bills, and Official Mark as 3 of the top 10 or so defensemen in this league on one roster. If Skills at 5-4-2 hits his stride like he probably will, he may end up with 20 something 4-2 by the end of the season. Official Mark may end up at 23-5 at the end of the season. This is a team that will probably maintain its position at the top of this division within the top 1 or 2 spots. But the way that it's shaken out, it's really starting to look like in the Eastern Conference that you're going to want to be one of those teams that wins your division, whether it's the Metro or the Atlantic. You're going to want to face one of those wild card teams because the teams at the top of these divisions seem to be very evenly matched as far as talent goes on the roster. And so far, point total output this season, Columbus has been running away a little bit with their point totals over there. But, I think if you put Columbus up against New Jersey in a 7-game series, it would be a lot closer than the 12-point difference that separates them to this point. So, I think Buffalo has a lot of good pieces on this roster. They've made a couple of moves to bring in some guys. They brought in Jay Stevens, Easy Dangles. They made that big trade to bring in Braden and Busy and Balaki, as I said. What are you seeing with the Buffalo Sabres?
Depth. I see a lot of outstanding players on this team with a few superstars sprinkled in. So this is definitely a team that is where they belong. I would expect them to, maybe have a little bit more points than they actually do at this point, which means that this team's been underachieving a little bit with the talent that they have. Henny 16 is an outstanding player in this league. We all know what Pinder can do. And then of course, like you said, you have Skills Pay Bills and Official Mark, who are two, and Braden as well, who are three of the best defenders in this league. So this team's definitely got what it takes to take this division. I think that, Ottawa's going to challenge them. The Red Wings may challenge them a little bit, but it's going to be between those three teams for this division title. And this is a little bit of the parity that you see is, and this is nothing against the bottom three teams in this league, but when you look at a roster like Buffalo's, you look across that roster and you see good player after good player after fantastic player after great player after good player after good player, and the list just goes on and on and on and on. You pair that with some good goaltending and one of the best defensive cores in the league, and you've got a team that can straight get it done. Like you said, losing Schroyer is going to be a big blow to their back end this year, but they gained Official Mark, and Dude Man Ryo is no slouch either. He can play. He can get it done as a defender in this league, and there's no doubt in my mind about it. I've seen him do it. So that's a solid depth defender to have on your team as well. So these guys, as well as Jay Stevens, he's been a GM and an owner in this league before, and he's just now coming back the past 2 seasons. So having a guy like that on your roster as well just kind of sneaks in there, and not a lot of people remember who he is. Busy, I'm not sure what's going on there with the, he's a guy that I haven't seen around much lately, so I wonder how many, if he's actually around much anymore to play, or what the deal is with him. He has only played 9 games total on the season. So
if I'm not mistaken, I think he's been pretty busy. So
yeah, he could be very busy with work. You never know.
Busy.
Yep. But that'd be interesting to see, because if that guy, all of a sudden comes to life, Buffalo just adds a huge piece to the team. Yeah. And he's a player who could come to life at any second here. So we'll see how that pans out for him. But Buffalo's got a great roster top to bottom. I think they're going to be there, absolutely fighting for this division title at the end of the season, and they're going to be making the playoffs, I think, pretty easily. I think Ryan's done a good job. Straight Psycho's come in and given him a hand over here, and I definitely think this team has some great pieces on it, and they look like they could make some serious noise in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, and they've got guys on this roster, and it's Johansson, who's like I said, only played 7 games. If he can get his availability back up to where it was, Busy's only played 9 games this season. If he can make sure he's available, all they need really is Busy to catch fire for 2 games out of his 3 a week. and he's a guy that can drop 6 goals in a game on a regular basis if he's hitting his stride. They've got guys like where I was going here a second ago, though, in Easy Dangles and Pinder, Straight Psycho. It's Johansson. They've got guys, Matty A, who can play
I
center,
think,
wing, move left and
yeah,
right. They've got
I
a
think
bunch of combos they can go with.
I think Matty A is going to be a good pickup for this team because he's actually him and Straight Psycho are actually friends outside of this, outside of league play and everything. They actually know each other. So, Matty A is one of those guys who, he's what's known as an analytics darling. If you go over and look at the advanced statistics, he's all over them and in a good way. He just hadn't had the right line mates this season, and he goes over there, and I'm sure most likely he's playing with Pinder, and he went 2-1 on the week with Buffalo and just barely lost to Chicago in his third game. So he's going to be a big addition for this team. I think he's going to help them down the stretch for sure.
Yeah, and like I was just saying with the forwards, they've got guys that can play multiple forward positions. So this is a team that, let's say they make 1 or 2 more deals before the trade deadline or whatever they may do. This is a team that after the trade deadline has passed, if something happens and they need to mix things up within their organization, not just switching guys from line to line, but maybe just swapping a guy from left wing to center on the same line and the other guy from center to left wing. They've got the dynamics and versatility on this roster to be able to do that and give you a different look. And maybe they don't need to do that specifically to do it all the time, but maybe they see a matchup where let's say Matty A and Straight Psycho are playing together, but they want to put Pinder on center and put Matty A on left wing or right wing. They've got the ability to do that. Both guys can play all those positions. So Buffalo is a team that I expect to be fighting with Ottawa and Detroit for this division title. They've got so many good defenders in Braden Skills and Official Mark that you couldn't fit them all. You can't fit all those top pair defensemen on your top pair because there's 3 of them. So that they've got 2 outstanding defensive pairs coming at you each week, and their third pair is probably a second pair anywhere else. So Ryan has built a very good roster here in Buffalo, and I expect the Buffalo Sabres to be a team contending not only for their division, but probably contending for a conference title and looking for a bit of revenge against those New Jersey Devils if they can make it back there, and New Jersey can do the same after last year's conference final. So look for Buffalo to continue to do what they've done to this point. And you're right, if they hit their stride, look out, because they're in first place in their division right now, and they've struggled a little bit. If this team can stop the struggle, they've made the right moves, get the right combos, this team could easily run away with this division if they get everything going right. I feel zero regard not to say that. There's no reason for me to feel any reason to feel bad about this team on a level of talent or personnel, because they are right there. They've got 2 good goalies. If you're rotating Belaki and Ryan, you're never facing a bad goaltender. You've got good defense. You've got good forwards. This is a team that's dynamic all the way top to bottom, and will continue to be so for the rest of the season. So, and if they make a deal to move guys, they've got plenty of roster talent, to help them in a deal to gain things. They've got their first round and Anaheim's second round picks, so not very many draft picks, but the guys that they have on their roster, if they're trying to make moves, have enough value within them that they can still bring in even more talent.
Yeah, they definitely do. If they can get their availability in order in Buffalo, I think they're definitely going to be a team that's challenging a team like Columbus or New Jersey for that Eastern Conference title.
Well, they have to want a guy like it's Johansson to be there for his 12 games this season, because he's 5-1-1 in his 7. You only have to assume that maybe in his other 5 games he goes 3-1-1. So he's 8-2-2 on the season, they could definitely use that. That would help them tremendously. And that's just getting the guy on their roster to be able to play his games. And maybe he went on vacation, so maybe he's back and he'll do just that. But yeah, they're set up in a good position to go the rest of the way here. So well, that does it for this week's division spotlight on the Eastern Atlantic. The Eastern Conference divisions always take forever because they have 8 teams in them. We are done with our divisions for this season. So starting next week, we will have normal length shows again. Thank God. And we will bring it to you with a bunch of different stuff. So let's go ahead and move into this week's LG Hockey Hotline Power Rankings. And without any further ado, we are going to move into our goaltenders, starting at the number 10 spot. For the Calgary Flames, you have D. Riley going 2-1 on the week with a 1.68 goals against average, an 85.7 save percentage, and 1 shutout. In the number 9 spot for the Philadelphia Flyers, they made a move to pick up 0033, who is one of the finalists for the Calder Memorial Rookie of the Year trophy last season. 2-1 on the week, a 1.33 goals against, and an 87.5 save percentage with 1 shutout. In the 8th spot for the Nashville Predators, going 2-0-1 on the week with a 1.21 goals against and a 90.5 save percentage with 1 shutout, is No Chance 85. And his counterpart, AGM of the Nashville Predators, H. Spartan G, also made the list just ahead of him at number 7, going 5-1 with a 1.65 goals against, an 83.6 save percentage with 1 shutout. Every goalie on this list this week did get at least 1 shutout, a couple of them picking up a couple of them. In the number 6 spot, you have Winston Payne, Xbox goaltender, making the move to PlayStation this season, going 3-0-1 for the Vancouver Canucks, picking up a 1.39 goals against, an 88.2 save percentage, and a shutout. In the number 5 spot, you have probably my favorite name in the entire league, and Perkasaurus, going 4-1 for the San Jose Sharks with a 1.6 goals against average and an 86 save percentage with 2 shutouts. In the number 4 spot, looks like we did get Schneider to come back. We were talking about that last week. Looks like he was able to play. Goes undefeated on the week at 4-0. In Schneider-like form, as per usual, a 0.75 goals against average. So he gives up 3/4 of a goal a game. And a 93.6 save percentage, outstanding numbers with 2 shutouts. That's the Schneider that, if he shows up, that's why St. Louis is sitting in first in their division, is things like that happening on their roster. He's an outstanding goaltender. In the number 3 spot, and Schneider was the league's 3rd star in the number 4 spot. In the 3rd spot, we have the league's 2nd star, Matt 4029 for the Dallas Stars, going 4-0 on the week with a 0.75 goals against average and a 91.9 save percentage with 1 shutout. In the number 2 spot, IG Unreal for the Philadelphia Flyers, going 2-0 on the week, a 0.44 goals against, a 96.3 save percentage with 1 shutout. And then in the number 1 spot, picking up the league's 1st star on the week, is Chapman for those red-hot Columbus Blue Jackets, picking up his 2nd straight 6-0 week, 1.11 goals against average, 89.2 save percentage, and 2 shutouts on the week. Also picking up for the 2nd straight week, my 1st star for goalies on LG Hockey Hotline. Got a chance to play with him last night, and then guys were getting tired, and we got smashed in the last game. But Chapman's a good dude. He's a really good goaltender, and he has been helping Columbus tremendously between the pipes so far. So congratulations to Chapman on winning the 1st star of the week again, and good job to all 10 goalies making this list, having at least a shutout this week, and only 4 regulation losses between all of the goalies on this list for the entire week. Let's move to defense.
Yeah, and another point on the goaltenders for this week, which was something, it may or may not have happened at some point, but this is the first time that I actually noticed it. After Tuesday night, when the power rankings or the stars of the night came out the next day, every single goaltender that was on that list of 9 had a shutout the night before. It was mind-boggling looking at it. I was like, wait a minute, is this right? And, on top of that, I know our goalie had a shutout that night, so there are even more goaltenders on Tuesday night that had a shutout. So hats off to all the goaltenders there on especially Tuesday night and this week. There was a lot that had a good job. All right, for the defenders at the number 20 spot, we have Felix, who went for Dallas, who was 2-0 on the week with 3 points and a +5. In the 19 spot is Entry for the Columbus Blue Jackets, going 3-0, picking up a couple of points and a +5 on the week. At the 18th spot is Quantum Physics for the San Jose Sharks, who went 2-0 on the week with a couple of points. 1 goal, 1 assist, a +8 on the week. In the 17th spot is Shroom Smoke for the Philadelphia Flyers, going 2-0 on the week, picking up 1 point, which was an assist, but it was a +6 on the week. Shroom Smoke. In the number 16 spot is Pete Sear for the Edmonton Oilers, going 3-0 on the week, picking up a couple of points and a +8. In the 15th spot is Snoop 651 for the Nashville Predators, going 3-0 on the week with 3 points, picking up a goal and a +9 on the week. In the 14th spot is Ebony Fetishes, going 3-0 for the Dallas Stars, picking up 3 points this week, one of which was a goal and a +5. In the 13th spot is Matt Perreault for the Edmonton Oilers, going 3-0 on the week, picking up 4 points, one of which was a goal and a +4 on the week. In the number 12 spot is Poland's Finest for the Nashville Predators, 3-0 on the week, 3 points and a +4. In the number 11 spot is the GM of the Minnesota Wild, Rye of the Beholder, goes 3-0 on the week with 4 apples and a +8 on the week. Rounding out the top 10 here is Green Salt from the Vancouver Canucks, who's a big Xbox guy, going 3-0 on the week, picking up 3 points, which were all assists, +10 on the week. In the number 9 spot is Iron Man 1416, going 3-0 on the week with 3 points and a +12. In the number 8 spot is Calm Blue Ice for the Nashville Predators, going 3-0 on the week with 4 assists and a +11. In the number 7 spot is a guy we just spoke in great detail about in Braden for the Buffalo Sabres, going 3-0 on the week, picking up 3 assists and 1 goal and a +7. In the number 6 spot is Greeno for the New York Rangers, and I would just like to tip the cap to the New York Rangers, who have really started to come on here as the season's gone on. They've currently got themselves up into the 5th spot in the Metro Division. They're sitting just on the outside of the playoffs and making a good push here. So hats off to the Rangers. It's good to see them making a push here and getting themselves into the conversation. In the number 5 spot is Elite 76 for the Minnesota Wild, going 3-0 with 6 points, 1 goal, +9 on the week. In the number 4 spot is Downey for the Philadelphia Flyers, going 2-0 on the week with 4 assists and a +6. Rounding out the top 3 is Mika DVA Mika, other known as Barris, going 3-0 on the week with 8 assists and a +7. In the number 2 spot is Enable 7 for the Washington Capitals, going 2-0 on the week with 4 points, 2 goals, and a +4. And in the number 1 spot, and the guy who is going to get my star of the week for defenders, for the St. Louis Blues, Bo Dangles 10, who is an outstanding defender in this league, goes 3-0 on the week, picks up 7 points, a goal, and a whopping +12, which ties him for the highest, along with Iron Man, from those same St. Louis Blues. So great job to Bo Dangles and all 3 of those St. Louis Blues defenders that made it on the list this week.
Yes, and Bo, I have been playing a lot of RB6 with him. He likes to carry me that and that too. He's got good thumbs everywhere. It would seem so. He's having an outstanding season. I believe he still doesn't have a regulation loss on the season, right? He's like 11-0-1 on the season, maybe.
I don't
Um,
know.
I believe, but I guess while you look that up, I will move
I'm
into
going to
this
fact check.
week's. I'm moving into this week's forwards in the 20 spot for the Philadelphia Flyers. Though he's not there anymore, he was just traded. Saucy going 2-0 with 6 points, 3 goals, and a +6. In the number 19 spot, the San Jose Sharks, number 1 overall pick. Tight end killer going 3-0 with 8 points, 5 goals, and a +2. What is the verdict
11
over there?
0-1.
Yep, 11-0-1. No regulation losses for Bo Dangles. Um, that's a I don't know, that's a decent start to your season. So, in the 18 spot for the Anaheim Ducks, Sublime 3, 2-1 on the week, 12.7 goals +6. In the number 17 spot, Gucci Mane 50 for the Edmonton Oilers, going 3-0 on the week with 8.6 goals and a +8. In the number 16 spot for the Buffalo Sabres, Henny 16 going 3-0 with 9 points, 4 goals, and a +6. In the number 15 spot for the Colorado Avalanche, Genoa 420 going 3-0 on the week, 9.6 goals, and a +6. In the number 14 spot for the Dallas Stars, Colt Crazy going 3-0, 12 points, 4 goals, and a +6. Run on +6s there, huh? In the number 13 spot, Kay Stiding for the Anaheim Ducks going 2-0 with 7 points, 3 goals, and a +9. In the number 12 spot for the Minnesota Wild, Crazy Lish going 3-0 with 11 points. 9 of those were goals and a +3. In the number 11 spot, Brissett going 2-0 for the Philadelphia Flyers, 7 points, 3 goals, and a +6. In the number 10 spot for the New York Rangers, Double Bra going 3-0 with 12 points, 4 goals, and a +7. In the number 9 spot, Landeck 5 for the Nashville Predators going 3-0, 10 points with 6 goals and a +11. And there is an ambulance. Or was that a goal horn? The world may never know. In the number 8 spot for the Detroit Red Wings, Gally Chucky going 3-0 on the week, picking up 10.7 goals and a +4. Also did want to point out tight end killer and Landeck played both center and a wing position this week. In the number 7 spot, JT 412, just try hard, going 3-0, 13 points and 7 goals with a +6.
Look at them New York Rangers.
Yep. And in the number 6 spot, the GM of the St. Louis Blues, Pacioretty 67, putting it back on the power rankings this week, going 3-0, 9.7 goals and a +7. In the number 5 spot, B37 Will for the New York Rangers, going 3-0 on the week, 12 points, 6 goals and a +7. In the number 4 spot, Novak for Prez for the Colorado Avalanche, 2-0, 7 points, 5 goals, and a +6. In the number 3 spot, with the league's 3rd star, for the Dallas Stars, the blind ref going 3-0, 14.7 goals, and a +8. In the number 2 spot, with the league's 2nd star, for the Dallas Stars, I9I- Stamkos I1IC going 3-0 with 17.7 goals and a +8. And in the number 1 spot with the league's 1st star, Rico TCX7 going 3-0 with 13 points, 8 goals, and a +13. Outstanding job by those guys there. For me, the plus minus doesn't mean as big a deal to me. So for me in this one, I have to go with Stamkos getting my number 1 star for forwards for the week, picking up 17 points, which was the highest of any forward in the week. He had 7 goals, which is, I think, good for 3rd in the week in goals. But he also had 10 assists. 5.7 points a game this week. That, he was right around the 6 point a game mark. Anytime that you're that high and going 3-0, helping your team, you're doing an outstanding job, especially on the forward spot, going 6 points a game almost at center. So good job there, Stamkos, and congratulations to Stamkos, Bo Dangles, and Chapman for winning our 3 stars of the week on LG Hockey Hotline. I am V High reporting to you from St. Louis. Moran, back to you.
Well, week 4 is in the books, everybody. We are done finally with our, divisional breakdowns.
Division spotlight.
We're going to have, a lot of other segments that we're going to add to the show here as we move through the halfway point of the season. So we'll have some other stuff to fill the airtime. Don't worry. We'll kind of take in-depth looks at players, who's in the running for specific awards throughout the season. We're going to bring that back as we get through the halfway point, and it seems to be a little bit more relevant at this point in time to start looking at those guys and seeing who's the heavy favorites for, the Selke and the Lady Bing and the Rocket Richard and, all of those trophies at the end of the season. So we'll take a look at that and dive into that as we go into week 5 here, if you can believe that.
Yep. Well, whether you believe it or not, it is happening. So before we get out of here, I don't have much more to talk about as we've covered a lot, but I do want to go through quickly the standings for both conferences just to update people who may or may not look at those but are watching the show. So in the Eastern Conference, leading the entire league in points right now are still those Columbus Blue Jackets, who are 31-3-2 on the season. 64 points through 4 weeks in LG is on pace to do something I don't think has been done yet. So we'll see if they can maintain that pace. I don't know if they've been facing a lot of first lines. They have a really, really good roster. They're deep. They've got 3 lines to throw at you every single night. But we'll see if they can maintain. 31-3-2. If you look at the Devils at 25-9-2, which is the second best in the entire league, that's extremely tough to maintain. But to be 31-3-2 through 4 weeks is an incredible job. And that is truly what you were talking about earlier, worst to first. Blue Jackets being the last place team in the league last season, going to by far and away through 4 weeks anyway, the best team in LG this season. So hats off to the Blue Jackets sitting there leading the league, their division, and their conference. In second in that division is the Devils at 52 points. And third in that division right now are the Carolina Hurricanes with 38 points. In the Atlantic Division, which we just covered, the Sabres at 42, Senators at 41, and the Red Wings at 40. The 2 wild card spots are currently both at 35 points with the Flyers and the Florida Panthers. Moving to the Western Conference, this is a much tighter race top to bottom. The Blues are at 46 points, the Blackhawks are at 45 points, and the Stars are at 44 points in that Western Central Division. Let me just go through that division, because in the 4th place position in that division are the Wild at 44 points. Stars are at 44 in 3rd, Wild at 44 in 4th, the Predators at 44 in 5th, the Avalanche at 40 in 6th, and the Jets are sitting at 32 in 7th. But that division is, as usual, holding hands the whole way. The Western Pacific sits with the Flames, the defending Western Conference champions, sitting at the top of their division with 50 points, 3rd in the league. 25-11-0, no overtime losses on the season is unbelievable, and only 2 overtime wins. In second place, another team that struggled last season that has done markedly better this season are the San Jose Sharks, sitting at 48 points, which is good for 4th in the entire league. San Jose Sharks having an outstanding season, 23-11-2. behind those Calgary Flames. In the third spot are the Vancouver Canucks at 44 points. And then, of course, as I was just talking about, the Wild and Predators before, tied with the Stars at 44 and the Canucks at 44. The Wild and Predators at 44 points are your 7th and 8th place, both wild card teams. And then you've got the Ducks, Avalanche, Oilers, Coyotes, and Kings that are all within 6 points of that, right behind them. And then the Jets are 12 points back, but a tight race top to bottom in the West. A little bit more spread out in the East, but a good race nonetheless going on, as the Flyers and Panthers at 35, the Rangers and Capitals in 9th and 10th, just outside the playoffs at 33, the Penguins at 31, the Islanders at 30. Then you got that three-way going on between Boston, Toronto, and Tampa at 26, and the Canadiens at 23. So that is what your playoff race looks like through this point, and we have some big divisional matchups this week. We'll see. Next week, we could be as close as most of these races are. We could be talking about completely different standings, and I almost expect to when we sit down next week and talk about this. So that's all I got for this week. Good luck to everybody with your divisional games this week, and we will see you next Saturday night on LG Hockey Hotline. Moran, I'm going to kick it back to you. I am finished.
Well, coming up on the halfway points in the season, we have a lot of teams that are pushing for a playoff spot in the West, and some teams that are looking to push in the East, such as the Rangers and the Capitals. So we'll see what happens with all the interdivision play going on this week. Good luck to everybody as we approach the halfway point in the season, and we're out of here. We will catch you next week.